Ingrid, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you.
I'm excited to be back in Minneapolis. I was just here last week.
Yes. Yeah, so you were here for a celebration out at Paisley Park,
Yeah.
and you were taking part in a panel discussion about Graffiti Bridge. So I want to ask you a little bit about what memories that brought back. But I thought we'd start with I want to know the beginning of your story here in Minneapolis. How did you come to this city?
Well, I was living in Atlanta, Georgia, and I started a band with a guy that was from Minneapolis. His name was Steve Snow, and we had a band called China Dance. And we were down in Atlanta, and we had just acquired all this equipment. We were getting ready to start rehearsing and, do our thing. And we left to take a friend to the airport, and we came back and someone had stolen all of our stuff. So having nothing left in Atlanta, we decided that we would come to Minneapolis where he was from. And about a little over a year later, I ran into Prince. And that's when this whole other chapter of my life started.
Yes. So tell us the story about meeting Prince. I know you were at Williams Pub in Uptown, Minneapolis.
Yes, back then, I'm not sure what Williams Pub is like anymore. I see that it's still there. So one night I went there, and I happened to be by myself because a friend of mine had canceled on me, and I almost didn't go because I was like, I don't want to go alone, but I did. And I saw Prince come in, and I went and sat by the bar, and there was something kind of sad about the way he looked that night. And so I sent him a note, and I just said in the note, "Hi, remember me? Probably not, but that's okay. Smile. I love it when you smile." And I handed it to him, and he had someone come over, and he asked me to sit with him, and he asked me what my name was, and I said Gertrude, and I asked him what his name was, and he said Dexter, and so that's who we were to each other all the way through, the time that we worked with each other. I never called him Prince. And that was in the day when he would wear the little mirror hearts on his wrist. And so he took it off and put it on my wrist. And he asked me what I do. And I said, I'm a musician. And then he asked me if I wanted to take a ride, if I wanted to go to Paisley Park. And I said yes.
That night?
Yeah, that night. And Paisley Park was really new back then. It'd just been built. So he took me to Paisley Park, and there's the room now that they have the Purple Rain, the Purple Rain room. I didn't really understand the evening, but he asked me to stay in that room, and he left for a while. But apparently, he had taken a drive with Kat and had called up Susan Rogers and done all these things. And Susan Rogers came that night, and he wanted her to meet me. She's probably thinking, like, what? You crazy man, what are you doing? It's 1 a.m. or whatever time it was. But so that's the first night that I met him, and then he took me home. That was that. There was nothing else that happened that night.
Wow. So one thing that you were very involved in was the creation of the Lovesexy album. You were working in the studios at the same time that Prince was starting to work on that album. Tell us more about this winter that you spent at Paisley Park working with Prince.
Well, so I met him December 1st, and shortly after that, he asked me he said, he already knew that I was a musician, so he put me in the studio. He said, you got Studio B, let's see what you got. And that day I went in with nothing, no idea what I was going to do, but the reason why I'm sitting here to this day is because I've always said yes. So I said, okay, all right. And I went in with basically an electric guitar that I didn't really know how to play, but I knew how to make weird sounds on it. And I recorded Reason Enough and Crossed the Line that night. I remember when I was done, Prince came in and said, okay, can I hear it? And I said, okay. And the engineer played it, and Prince stood there. His eyes were so wide, and he was just staring at me, and I was like, uh-oh. Have I just totally weirded him out, and apparently not, because he wound up using that actual recording in the intermission of Lovesexy. So the story goes, obviously, that night he canceled, the night that we met, he canceled the Black Album and decided to start writing Lovesexy. At some point, because I would write him all these letters and poems and stuff, and one day he was like, okay, look, you write 21 poems and we'll go and we'll make a record. And I was like, okay, I'm going to sit down and do my poems. And so when I had them, some of them were, most of them were, just written during that period anyway. So he put me in the vocal booth and put me at a microphone, and he was in the sound room with the synthesizer, and he would say, okay, so what's the title of the poem? And I would say, Heaven Must Be Near, or Elephant Box, and he'd say, okay. And he would start playing around with some sounds, and he would pick a sound that sounded like Elephant Box or Heaven Must Be Near, or whatever, and he would say, okay, start reading. So we went through all the poems that way, and then he was working on Lovesexy, and I was working on the poetry album. So if you put those two records side by side, they really do mirror each other, and they speak to each other. And if anybody, for me to say, like, what did you guys talk about back then? It's like, just listen to those two records. That's what we spoke about.
So I'm curious to know more about, because I really get the sense that you connected on almost like a spiritual level with Prince. What can you tell us about, what you saw in each other and kind of that connection that you shared?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to look back on that and know exactly what it was, but he was attracted to something that, I think a lot of people are attracted to who I am, and that's, just that I just love the poetry of life. And so spending time with him and speaking about, like, we would talk about God and life and, just a very positive space we were in. When I think about us, I really think about that winter, like we were just huddled down for the winter and just like in a cave. And these two records were born out of that.
So I want to ask you one more thing about specifically working in Paisley Park, because you returned to play a role in Graffiti Bridge as the angel. Tell us about kind of coming back into the fold then, and what was that like to be all of a sudden starring in a movie?
Yeah. So coming back into it was, again, just a whirlwind. The first time I went into his world, it was winter and it was quiet and it was really sweet, and we were all in this creative mode. And this time it was people all around, and it was just a whirlwind. One of the first things he did was fatten me up, I think. They had someone coming and delivering food to me every day, like, okay, we need to fatten you up a little bit, But that was always nice, like getting food delivered. But that was very challenging to me because I'd never acted. And I said yes before really, like, thinking about, like, okay, what is that going to mean for me,
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about what you're up to now.
Yeah.
Because you have a new album out this month.
I do. It's out on the 17th.
Yes.
Some of the musicians who I worked with on this record did remixes for the Deep and Heady album. And so when it came time to start looking for collaborators, I started working with them. So this record, Memories of Flying, took 4 years, and I've realized that it takes me 3 to 4 years to make a record. There's a few different co-writers on it. So there's Mashti from Mashti Project. He performed with me at Prime 6. There's Peter Musebrink of Deep Dive Corporation, and he's out of Germany. Mashti's out of Denmark. There's also Charles Webster out of England, and then Marco Valentin from Black Eskimos on it as well, and Ganga, he's out of Denmark as well. So there's all these different writers, and it has given it was interesting to try to work it out. How's this all going to be, sound like one piece, be cohesive. But the thread obviously is my voice and my style of writing. So somehow we brought it all together, and I think it works. I mean, it's a beautiful record, I think.